I don't want to look like a heavily laden pro. My ideal is to look like an amateur. For a travel photographer, that's a good thing, because we're dropped behind the lines of foreign cultures, and we're made to tell stories about those cultures and bring them back home. And so a smaller camera has been a part of my kit since the very beginning. The less obtrusive I can be, the better my pictures are. I don't like to tie them up forever. I feel like the best communication comes early on. We make that connection, I make my shots, and I'm out of there. So being able to work quickly and efficiently is an important part of the way I work. Yeah, talking about favorite images is hard. It's like trying to pick your favorite child. You love them all, kind of a thing. But the images that I treasure are the ones that I've worked hardest to overcome whatever those barriers are. The picture of the men bathing in what's called the Blue Lagoon was the runoff pond from a geothermal energy plant. I can remember the camera, and it was my FM2 and a 24 f2, and I got in the water and I got closer and closer to these guys, and I made this environmental portrait of them with this space station looking thing in the back and the water, and it was just a very bizarre and very unique image. If I were able to take this picture today with today's technology, with the DF, I would have been able to ascertain that I had the right exposure and the right look without running through 2 or 3 rolls of film, and I would have been able to do the job faster and get out of there a little faster, I think. The tradition of different film stocks for different looks does translate into the digital world, because I discovered Nikon's picture controls a couple of years ago. For many years in the beginning, I was shooting only RAW and making all my own JPEGs. And then I started shooting RAW plus JPEG, and when I noticed that I could actually fine-tune the look of the JPEG that came out of the camera, I started thinking of these different picture controls as different film stocks. So by thinking in terms of film stocks, I think it does translate over into the digital world, especially with those picture controls. A great camera is one that's almost transparent in its use. It has to be light, it has to be simple. It has to let me do everything I need to do, but not bog me down with a lot of bells and whistles that I personally don't need. I don't think this camera forced me to change much of the way I was working at all. I could glance down, see my shutter and all that kind of stuff, and it was like the film days. So I was more in the moment, I felt. I think it helped me work more in the moment, but I don't think it slowed me down in the least. In fact, I think it made me a little more streamlined. I had one day with the DF. I was overseas, I came back, the prototype was there, so I had to shoot in my backyard. And my backyard is in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. I went out and sought out some people situations, and one of the people I sought out was my buddy Jeff Klein, who's a pretty well-known blues musician down in the Philadelphia area. And he's got a wild old shop that's been in his family since his great-grandfather, an old guitar shop. But I felt with the DF that, man, I was right up to speed after an hour. So the DF feels like it has that film camera feel to me, and everything just falls under the right fingers, and it just felt immediately comfortable. I did not have that much time to learn my way around this camera, and it just felt comfortable, like a nicely broken in hiking boot. I knew exactly where I was and what I needed to do, and it was so refreshing to look down and see those shutter speeds and stuff like that. It was like, wow, this is what I remember from the old days. And yet, as I say, the results were totally modern and contemporary and fantastic. For me, a perfect image has to have 3 elements. It has to have great composition, it has to have great light, and it has to have a sense of moment. When those 3 elements come together, there's a communication. We're slicing off a minute of time or a fraction of time, and we're holding it up to show. And when those 3 elements all come together in a single frame, that for me is the perfect image.